Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, desolate search, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. I'm Useful A. Welcome. And I want to talk about the Department of Education. I know there's been a lot of talk under the Trump administration and his new Droge organization, the possibility of shutting down the Department of Education. And I think it's a great idea. And I think they could go after many other departments as well. Most of them have proved to be useless. Another one is the Department of Energy. Um, it basically has not really affected anything substantial in its entire existence after being created in the 70s. And here we are pouring tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars in this department, and it mostly seems to be involved in subsidizing the oil companies. And there doesn't seem to be a clear strategy for the Department of Energy. Um, the volatility of energy prices, whether it's natural gas or coal or oil, there doesn't seem to be any clear strategy, and there's been an incredible amount of volatility in the last 50 years, and the Department of Energy hasn't really addressed those issues whatsoever. And the Department of Education is a prime example of that. It was created in 1980. It has a budget of $238 billion and has a mere 4,400 employees. And of course, as per a video I did recently, of those 4,400 employees, only 1% of them are actually going to work now. And so the department, in a lot of ways, even with a $238 billion budget, really is a virtual branch of the government, a virtual cabinet. And once again, what do we have to show for it? The American education system from top to bottom, from grade school to high school to college, is completely ineffective, um, and seems to be more of a cash cow, because if all that money was released directly to the states, imagine $238 billion allocated to the states to maintain and run and upgrade their own education systems. We would have one of the best education systems in the world with that kind of money. And here in Washington State, and it's the same in school systems throughout the country, they're strapped. They're strapped for the basics. Their budgets are all in the hole, and school closings are rampant, and classroom sizes are growing larger all the time. Teachers are overtaxed. And then we have the burden, of course, of all the migrants, children coming to the U.S. that go into the education system as well. And so uh, the amount of expenditures in 2024, even with a budget of $283 billion, they spent $83 billion of it in 2024, up from $73 billion in 2023. And almost all that money is going for student loans and financial aid. And that's what I mean by a cash cow. Um, all this money for the Department of Education basically goes for the exploitation of students and the symbiotic relationship between this and moral hazard of just skyrocketing costs for education. And it's caused by the fact that um, there's no reason for school costs to go down, tuition to go down, if we have private institutions and then mostly the government backing these student loans and putting all these students in debt. And then, of course, we have this huge debacle of Biden illegally and unconstitutionally, and this has been borne out by court decisions, that he really has no power to forgive all the student debt. And of course, it's going to be a bitter pill when the dust settles and all these students were hoping to get their debts dismissed, and they're not. And then, of course, there's the whole sector of students who aren't part of these programs to forgive student debt, and how they must feel if they see a certain percentage of, of student borrowers that are targeted for debt forgiveness, and then there's a whole sector of society that just isn't eligible for it, and that's not fair either. So once again, we find the government in a position where they're picking winners and losers. But some of the other things recently that are ridiculous coming from the Department of Education is that over the last couple of years under the Biden administration, um, they spent $490 million to encourage race-based hiring. They spent $343 million on DEI programming for the school system, and they spent $160 million on DEI mental health initiatives, because all the shit they're doing is driving people crazy and driving them insane and getting them depressed. And so now they create the problem, and then they have to be paid to address the problem. But why do we have a Department of Education that should be focusing in on education and is involved in all this woke programming? And once again, I go back to the fact that we could eliminate this department. We could eliminate easily 4,400 overpaid civil servants, and then the buildings and property that they inhabit, and give $283 billion directly to school systems across the 50 states. What a vast improvement that would be. So it's kind of funny to hear people freak out and be outraged about the idea of closing a department when they have no idea what it does. They have no idea what its liabilities are. They have no idea what its effectiveness is. And they just have this knee-jerk reaction that somehow we need the Department of Education. And ironically, they're not educated enough to realize the pragmatism involved in the idea of closing a department. Somehow they just assume it does all these valuable things, and that's the same with many departments in the government. There's this idea that somehow they're doing all these valuable things, that they're completely necessary. The idea of eliminating them is just completely goes against their grain. They have this knee-jerk reaction, and they have no idea. And when you get in there and you look at these kind of numbers, and you look at the present American educational system, the idea of closing the Department of Education makes complete sense. And the fact that people are so uneducated that they can't use critical thinking and they can't do a little research shows just how poorly our education system is functioning. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.